Speaking of movies that have very little to satisfy horror fans,
Hey!
what's up? What's up next, Chucky?
Well, we're going to be talking about The Terminator. The original... Well, it hasn't been remade, but there's been so many sequels, versions of this that have since come out. So a seemingly indestructible cyborg who's sent back in time to assassinate a waitress whose unborn son will lead the human race in a war against these machines. And there's also a soldier from that war that's also sent back in time to protect her. Very classic 80s action sci-fi movie. Probably Arnold Schwarzenegger's most iconic role, I would say. I'm very surprised that you hadn't seen this movie up until, half an hour ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, I'll get into that story once it comes over to me.
But yeah, I think, this movie has a very intricate plot, which also gets expanded upon, especially in its sequel, but also its other movies, and maybe they run away with it a little too much in the more recent movies, but I think it's a movie where, I'm sure if you think really hard, you can maybe find some small plot holes or concerns with the story, but overall, for a movie with such a level of detail, I think they've put some really good thought into it, and even though it's not a horror movie, I think it definitely has, especially as the movie goes on, it definitely... I guess if you're a kid watching it, you would find it a fairly scary ending. Yeah, so... I do have other things to say about it, but maybe I should first get your opinions on it.
Yeah, I think it's an okay movie. It's nothing great. It's like... I'll be honest, Arnold Schwarzenegger was never an actor that I particularly cared for. I think he does decent in this role, because he's basically a cyborg, and he has an intimidating physique.
Yeah, I guess they're like, well, it's a perfect role for him because you just have to say the lines, no emotion, please. Well, that's kind of how he acts in his previous movies, anyways.
Yeah, so I don't know. This so like Chucky said, I'd actually not seen this movie until today. I finished it about 35 minutes or so before we started talking, so about maybe 45 minutes until we started the show. And I think it's a decent movie. I'll be honest, since I've seen it this late in life, and it makes it sound like I'm dying, but I'm mildly young. It reminded me quite a bit of a movie that came out later, titled 12 Monkeys, which is another very classic sort of time travel sci-fi movie. After seeing so many other more modern sci-fi movies, the movie's decent, but especially toward the end, I thought, I could see, they could do this, interesting plot twist, and maybe they do in the sequels, I don't know, I haven't seen them, but, I thought they could have added another thing or two at the end, and they didn't really go that direction, so I don't know. I thought the ending was somewhat satisfying, but the movie as a whole, I think it's a decent movie, don't get me wrong, I just don't love it.
I don't know about for you, but even though I really do enjoy the movie, it is just one of those classic movies that a lot of people tend to enjoy, but it does feel a little bit outdated, with the stop motion they use towards the end, and some people will say, wow, that's nostalgic. I don't think nostalgia works quite as well when you're dealing with movies that have themes about the future or, technology-driven movies, because the technology seems a little underwhelming when you consider what we have today.
Now that you mention it, I sort of liked how this futuristic world, if I recall, it was like 2029.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's coming up, guys.
Yeah, so watch yourselves out there. But it's definitely worth saying that, and I'm pretty sure the general consensus is that the sequel is actually a lot better, and that's how I feel too. I think the sequel's one of the best action movies of all time. So I know you're saying that this wasn't such a great movie for yourself, but who knows? Maybe you enjoy the sequel a little more.
Yeah, I want to expand on that just a little bit. I don't think the movie's particularly bad, but when I think about 80s movies I enjoy watching, I mean, there are so many other, non-horror movies from the 80s that I'd rather pay my DVD player than the Terminator. Just to name two. And these are both more comedic, but both of them have, some okay action in them. One being Beverly Hills Cop, and another being the straight-out comedy Police Academy. Both 80s movies, both very enjoyable times. Even something like Witness with Harrison Ford, that's a movie I'd probably prefer over The Terminator. That said, The Terminator is still a decent movie. It's just, maybe it might take another viewing, if I ever give this another viewing. It's just not, something first time seeing it that really grabbed me that much. One thing that, it didn't necessarily bother me, but the fact that the Terminator, Schwarzenegger's android, was just so over the top unstoppable. Like, no matter what these characters did, they can, run and drive as much as they want to, the guy's going to find you. Like, past a certain point, it almost seemed like somewhat pointless. Like, the guy's going to get you, might as well just deal with it, I don't know. It just, the guy seems so, the android seems so OP. And that took away a little bit of the suspense, because I just sort of expected, well, eventually these guys are screwed. And as it turns out, they were eventually screwed, but the individuals somewhat able to get out of it. As I were to add on, I thought the final sequence, like at the gas station, I thought that was fantastic. I actually really liked that. Sort of like a nice low-key ending. So, I don't know. I'll probably watch the sequel sometime in the future. So if it's about the movie, that would be great. This one's, like I said, it's not a bad movie. Just not like a new favorite.
So yeah, the Terminator's a classic action sci-fi film that, it's so popular that I don't think there's a whole lot we could really say about it. I think most people know the movie, and well, except for a few people like you, who have probably seen this at least once, many times before. I give the movie an 8 out of 10. I enjoy it. It does feel a little bit outdated, and that plays against it just to a small degree, because we're talking about the future, and we know now that the future is not exactly, the technology that we have today seems quite different to how they've kind of planned it out then.
Yeah, so I'm not that far removed from Chucky's feelings on this one. I thought there was a lot to like about this movie. I definitely enjoyed the action sequences. A lot of good shotgun and firearm action going on. It's a decent movie. It's just not one that blew me away. I'd probably give this one a 7.5. And I'd probably round it up to an 8. Too much Chucky. But it just, it's a decent movie. It's just not one of my, it's just not a movie I'll probably go back to all that often. Sorry guys.
I do recommend watching the sequel at some point, because it overall it is a much better movie, more story, probably a lot more thrills. You've got two Terminators, one being a very more advanced Terminator who does, to some extent, do some kills that are more in line with maybe a slasher aspect, because he can create weapons out of his own body. Like he could just turn his arm into a spear or whatever. But anyways, we'll leave Terminator 2 for another day.